Before we crossed to the island, you should know who was crossing. Even before this story began, my great-grandfather was never a stranger to me. My grandmother, his daughter, talked about him through my whole childhood. His patience, his honesty, his stubborn, inconvenient courage. Some things don't change with the century. Fathers are always their daughters' heroes. What she never explained is why a man like that spent his 40s measuring roofs for an insurance company. Earlier I told you his report was in perfect order. Almost. This is the almost. He kept his own copy of that report, and tied in with it, never filed, never handed to anyone, there was a notebook. Leather, pocket-sized, the corners worn soft. No letterhead, no client, no conclusions. Just his handwriting, page after page, written at night in that house, and as far as I can tell, written for nobody at all. Some things you don't write down to tell the story. You write them down to get them out of your head. Everything I'm going to tell you that isn't in the official file comes from those pages. Starting with this part, the part about him. Sebastiano Morel had been a Scotland Yard detective for 15 years. A good one. And good ones make enemies in both directions, among the people they catch and among the people they embarrass. 1928. A man named Pemberton walked out of a gentleman's club in Mayfair one evening and never arrived anywhere. No body, no note, no ticket on any boat. What he did leave behind was a debt to that club, a large one. The case landed on my great-grandfather's desk. He did what he always did. He followed the money. It led into the back rooms of the club and out again, to somebody the club was protecting. And that is where his investigation stopped being welcome. He was told to file it as a debtor who had run. A man who had picked a new name and a warmer country. Nothing here to investigate. Sign. Everything in his own file said otherwise. So he didn't. The case was closed anyway. Just not by him, and within the year, not with him. First a basement desk, cataloguing other men's cases. Then a resignation that everybody agreed to call voluntary. The official word was resignation. My grandmother always used a different one. So by October 1934, the most incorruptible detective Scotland Yard ever lost was working for Lloyd's of London, authenticating water damage. Life has a sense of humour. It just isn't always kind. Now, 1934. If all you remember of that October is the weather, you're remembering the wrong storm. That autumn, a British officer was sitting in the Tower of London for selling military secrets across the Channel. In Westminster, the Lords argued about how many aeroplanes the country ought to build. New winds from the continent, one of them said. And in country houses like Ravenmoor, the men who decided such things spent their weekends being charming to one another. Because in this country, what gets said in a drawing room on Saturday has always been worth more than what gets said in committee on Tuesday. Somebody had worked that out. Somebody had also worked out that it could be sold. Which brings me back to the club. The Belmont. Cards, brandy, discretion, an excellent cellar. Gentlemen lost money there. Gentlemen lose money everywhere. What made the Belmont different is that it was delighted when you lost. It extended credit. It let the number grow. The debt wasn't an accident of the business. The debt was the business. Because a man who cannot pay in pounds can be invited to pay in what he knows. Who is ruined and hiding it. Who is unfaithful and frightened. Which cousin in which ministry can be leaned on and where. And to gather that, you don't send spies. Spies get noticed. You send guests. A young man who tunes the piano. A companion for an elderly aunt. A portraitist who comes down for 3 weeks to paint your wife and stays for 5 because he is such marvellous company. Nobody watches the person the family has already invited in. They go home with names, habits, timetables, and now and then with the plan of a house drawn from memory, every room labelled. And where did all that paper go? To the coast, and then out to sea, to the country's enemies, or to those who planned to be. That was the Belmont. The same club Mr. Pemberton walked out of one evening in 1928 and never arrived home from. He couldn't pay in pounds. It seems he declined to pay the other way. Most of that I know now, from books. My great-grandfather knew it then, because a few days before he left, a letter arrived. No letterhead, no full signature, just an initial, H. An old colleague from the yard, who had since moved to the department that handles the things the yard doesn't keep files on. He was writing to ask the kind of favour that officially does not exist, because the line, he wrote, reached that coast. A boat working off that island was carrying more than fish, and one of the people who would be sitting at Lord Finchley's table that weekend was, they believed, one of the hands that wrote those dossiers. He wasn't asking for an arrest, there was no warrant, and the storm was about to shut the island anyway. He was asking my great-grandfather to look. At the house, at the guests, at the water. Who sends? Who receives? How? Do your job, he wrote. Sign your forms. But while you are there, look for us too. And then H pulled the one string he knew would hold. He mentioned Pemberton. A name, he wrote, can be set right again, if it comes back with something in hand. The Lloyd's report contains none of this. The notebook contains all of it. So my great-grandfather packed the raincoat, the briefcase and the notebook, and went to do his job. The job looked simple enough. Lord Alistair Finchley of Ravenmoor was claiming £50,000 for storm damage, his third claim in 5 years. The paperwork was immaculate, and that was the problem. Honest damage is never that tidy. The file held 4 names: the Lord himself and his young wife, the Lord's sister, who hadn't spoken to him in 20 years, and her daughter, who happened to be his lawyer. 20 years of silence, one solicitor in common. Nothing in that family had ever been simple. He took the train to the coast while the weather got worse and crossed on the last boat they would allow out. Ravenmoor rose over black cliffs, built, he wrote, as if consequences was something that happened on the mainland. A butler opened the door, flawless manners, and a ring of keys for every lock in the house. Behind him came the lord of the manor, arms open, while the storm shut the island behind my great-grandfather's back. 2 days, then his signature, or his refusal. That is what Lloyd's believed he was there to decide,